In today's episode, you'll learn how AI is transforming the oil and gas industry, from improving safety, reducing costs, and increasing productivity. We dive into AI's benefits, challenges, and opportunities that executives are looking for to modernize their energy operations. We also look at concerns involving data quality, workforce adoption, and cybersecurity. Whether you're in upstream, midstream, or downstream operations, today's insights show the growing role of AI in your industry. Let's accelerate your business. Welcome to the AI Accelerator for Business show, where you get the latest strategies, tactics, and information about the business benefits of artificial intelligence. My name is Carl Ye. I'm the Chief AI Officer with 0 to 60.ai. I'm also joined by my co-founder, Jeff Bradshaw, and today we're talking about AI in the oil and gas industry.
Thanks, Carl. And why this is an important topic is that the oil and gas industry, the energy industry, is something that's very driven by cost efficiencies, safety improvements, environmental compliance. And I think that's where I think AI can really step in and help improve these efficiencies and streamline processes for companies in the energy industry.
So I want to start off with saying that, we are not the experts in oil and gas, for people who are in oil and gas. I think what our focus here today is to showcase how AI could help in the business of oil and gas, right? And give you some examples. And I think I want to start with why we're doing this is there is a gap. There is an AI gap. And what I mean by a gap is from those people and businesses that are using AI regularly versus those who aren't using them at all or using them infrequently. And that gap is growing because of the pace of change, pace of how fast AI is evolving, all the new tools and features. I think whenever we do a presentation to any businesses, we talk about, take, for example, the iPhone 1, which was announced 2007, and then at the current version of the iPhone 16. So imagine if the iPhone 16 was launched the year after the iPhone 1 was launched. No one would know how to use it. Businesses can't take advantage of it because it took nearly 2 decades for people to know how to use, build on the uses, build on the applications, leverage it to create brand new businesses, leverage it to impact current businesses. And that evolution has evolved since 2007 to 2024. But with how AI is moving, that stuff doesn't matter anymore, or that pace of adoption has been turned upside down because that's how fast AI is moving, right? It's within a year, we're talking within months, sometimes weeks of new things. Like every week there's something new. Traditionally, or maybe an outside perspective, is that the oil and gas and energy industry is maybe perhaps a laggard in adopting new tech or leading edge tech, something that's different than tech or SaaS companies.
Well, I think, Carl, it's interesting you say that because I think there's that perception. And yet, from my experience, I think energy companies are some of the fastest organizations to adopt new technology. But I think AI is one that in every industry, and you and I see this every week, it's coming so quickly that I don't think organizations have had an opportunity to even catch up to it, because we understand that you have businesses to operate that are busy, that have lots of complexities to them. And so to all of a sudden tag on this whole new AI thing, I think is challenging. But I don't think that's a reason why organizations shouldn't look at it, because you talk about the speed of the development of this technology. And I think that's what we want to talk about today. There's some real specific AI applications that we know that can help improve your efficiency 10 to 40% today. We also know there's going to be new developments in the future that will be able to do even more using AI technology. But, one of the things we always warn companies on is to not dive too deep into something that might be hype, that might not be trustworthy just yet because the technology is still being developed. But I think one of the things that every company should focus in on, Carl, is really where there's kind of disruptions or opportunities for AI. And maybe you want to cover that kind of the 3 areas they're key for companies to think about.
And really, oil and gas, there's a lot of overlap with different businesses, right? And when we talk about those 3 areas, we're talking about, there's tasks that are repetitive, there's tasks that involve data, and there's tasks that involve prediction. And any company has those repetitive tasks that employees just either hate to do or just have to do it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, especially reporting. Reporting is a big one because you pretty much have set of data, report on it, and most of the time it goes nowhere but you just have to do it. Imagine if you have an AI that you can take that data, create a report that essentially you report on, but also provides quality analysis. Because we've always heard people say, hey, can you give me a report, a quarterly report, but also take into account quarter over quarter, month over month, year over year? Well, it's a pain in the ass to go out and try to find all those numbers because let's say you've just started and the report from the year before, the month before, the quarter before is a little different, or you just don't know what it looks like, or you don't have any context with these reports. So how can you make an analysis of it? But with AI, it can take not just those reports, but over years. So you have all this data that can help you provide an insights, provide some prediction. Speaking of prediction, we're talking about, and this is one thing for any business, is predictive analytics. What are data that you have that can help with prediction? And in the oil and gas industry, you have tools and you have machines and you have things that you have to maintain. One simple thing that you could think of is predictive maintenance. So, how long has this tool, machine, vehicle been in use? How often has it broken down? When does it usually need to get replaced? What parts need to get replaced? Something using predictive analytics, machine learning, and AI involved in it could be, hey, you know what? Based on historical data, this particular rig, this particular tool needs replacing every, I don't know, 5 to 7 weeks, 5 to 7 months, 5 to 7 years. Ideally, it'll let you know when things are about or upgraded. And on top of that, that's where you can not just impact. This has an across the board impact. Could impact safety to ensure your employees are safe because the tool doesn't break down. Impacts budget because you can plan with more accuracy when you need to purchase or upgrade. And then also understanding, hey, what does your overall business, what does your overall, let's say, tools and vehicles, what does that look like on an operations perspective, year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter, and so on?
I think that one of the things to think about, and Carl, you say this all the time, is that really there's three things where AI can step in. Is that, when you listen to this presentation, is that, you know, is the task that you have in your operations predictive? Is there prediction involved? Are they data driven or are they repetitive? And and I use your words, Carl, if there's one of those, there's an opportunity for AI. If there's two or more of those, there's disruption, and AI will definitely step in and provide efficiencies. And I think that's where this comes to play for energy companies, is that, again, it's an industry where the margins can be very thin. Things can change on a very quick timeline. And, I think that's where AI can really step in and help improve the efficiencies.
Well, some of these efficiencies are pretty simple to operate too. So, for example, if you are doing a quarterly report, you're able to use AI to take your quarterly report and then make an analysis of it. Or something efficient would be, let's say you have employees in the field. Well, instead of having to look at an employee handbook or manual if something happens or a safety concern, well, then you have a digital assistant to rely on rather than text, email, or calling somebody, right? So even those simple, when you talk about simple, those are really easy things that you can take a look at, workflows and processes that can you improve it by 10 to 40%, right? So just get rid of those boring, mundane, repetitive tasks.
I think as well, even when you think about in the energy industry, from an HR standpoint, from a hiring standpoint, to be able to recruit people, you can use AI to, help you create your job postings, but also review resumes. From a training standpoint, you can use AI to improve the efficiency of your training, and use it for improved training systems. Even getting feedback from employees, there's ways of analyzing data and creating solutions to get, reports and feedback from people out in the field, so it gets through to head office, to the executive team, so they can make informed decisions by being able to take this information and analyze it in a much quicker way.
I think like with any business too, if you look at it from, you have you will most likely have some sort of town hall meeting, most likely some sort of leadership meeting, whatever meeting, right? Really, one of the most easiest ways to use AI would be record those meetings and then transcribe it, but then export it to whether it's key messages or maybe faceless videos or create new internal messaging, um, whatever the export of like content that you need to internal communication communicate to stakeholders, externally communicate to stakeholders, market to stakeholders, whatever that is, you don't have to do multiple things. You can take one thing and do it. And one of the things we talked about too, like any business, is when we talked about there will be people in your organization that would have years or even decades of corporate knowledge. So what happens when those people leave or move on? Well, then that corporate knowledge goes out the door. But what you can do now is, hey, you can have them. You don't even have to, assign another employee to them. They can themselves just record a conversation answering a set of questions about their role or their a specific process, and then now you can extract all that information and then either run automations against it or create digital assistants or turn it into kind of that hey, these are the things that need to happen without having to call back. How many times have we seen business have to call back former employees or try to figure something out because that employee had all that knowledge or a couple employees had all that knowledge, and then the process no one knows how to how it's done.
Well, and we do that, like you say, Carl, we've done quite often. I mean, to take that information, you talk about like having a digital assistant or a co-pilot developed for a business. Every single business out there, we believe, should have a co-pilot built, and you can build that information to train the co-pilot by doing these interviews with senior long-term employees. And it's incredible. I mean, we use it for our business. We have multiple co-pilots that we've created for everything from AI knowledge to sales and marketing, solutions. Um, and it's trained on our company core values and philosophies and data and history and everything else. And I mean, it's incredibly valuable to have that at your fingertips, and people don't even realize it. And again, that's a solution that companies could be using today. It's technology that's here. Something else, and I mean, what the capabilities are. There's lots of research and development that is being done in the energy sector for companies looking for new ways to improve efficiencies. But if you talk about some of the like the O1 release from ChatGPT and kind of the level of thinking that's available.
I think that's where a new shift in thinking has to be, right? So when you talk about O1, we're talking about the ability to reason, right? And we've said in the past, we've shown, and I'll show here the five levels of AI, right? You have the chatbots, which we've gotten the ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Meta's Llama, Anthropic's Claude, um, and those type of chat interfaces. But then now we're into level two, which is reasoning, human level, and we're talking PhD level reasoning, that pretty much in your pocket. Now, obviously, a lot of business processes don't need PhD level reasoning, but think about 5, 10 year plans. Think about your business strategies. Think about those long term, more complex solving situations from clients, customers internally that isn't just straightforward. So this is an opportunity to use models that can really think through a problem and provide a more comprehensive solution rather than something like a simple chat GPT or 4.0 where you get the answer right away. I always talk about system one, system two thinking. System one thinking would be, if I were to say 2 plus 2, most people I'm hoping would say four. But if you have system two thinking, it would be, hey, what is the um, budget 5 year budget cycle of Ecuador? No one have that right off the top of their on the top of mind, unless you're probably the finance minister of Ecuador. But even then, requires you to think through. Something like O1 has that ability. So how can you take that and leverage it in your business? Because if you think about it, for $20 a month, you have a PhD level reasoning that could help you get into those complex or long term strategies for a complex business.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I think the energy business is, to some degree, a bit of a complex business, and that's where I think those types of tools are available, and many organizations probably aren't even aware of what's capable. Our approach to it, and I think every organization, I always say this, whether you do it yourself or whether you bring a group like us in, if you go through every individual department within your organization, whether it's, research and development, finance, operations, HR, marketing, sales, whatever it might be, and you start to look for those tasks that are repetitive, data driven, predictive, um, you'd be amazed with the number of processes that could use AI to improve your efficiencies and save time, save money, using tools when you get into things like the ChatGPT o1 model, PhD level thinking that's available to you. Um, it's enormous the opportunities, but you got to go through each one of those divisions and departments to start to identify those tasks. Because right off the top of your head, it's tough to think about what's repetitive. When you start taking a look at your business, you start to realize you got a lot of repetitive tasks. Even things like, the simple things like writing press releases, creating company policies, developing, business plans and strategies, like you mentioned, those right there are done in seconds, whereas traditionally it takes weeks, and it doesn't replace humans necessarily. I think there is opportunity to replace some human capabilities. Um, but what it does is it gives you a starting point in many cases to then have your human team review it and build off of it. And that's where the efficiencies are. And the problem that we find and the challenges is that, obviously that initial investment is something that not all companies have budgeted for. Not everybody has an AI budget in their line item in their budget. That's one concern. But we're big believers too that it doesn't have to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into the AI game. There's ways of getting in from an education standpoint or building out a basic strategy that are thousands of dollars or maybe tens of thousands of dollars to get you started, depending on the size of your organization. But it gets you down the path, and then creating pilots. And we, a lot of the times, will go into companies and take a look at their operations, do a strategy, and then do a couple of test pilots. So you can test to see the capabilities and where you can use it. And that's where it really opens up the opportunity. And the biggest thing is that Carl talked about the gap off the top. If you're not getting into it and not stepping into it and starting to learn about it, you run the risk of having a competitor that is doing that. And all of a sudden it comes, you're at a disadvantage by not looking into AI. So that's one of the things we really encourage with companies.
There are a couple challenges that I think like most companies should be aware of too. One is your AI project or tool is only as good as your data. And we've seen this enough that some businesses' data are either all over the place or are in a format or fashion that it'd be very difficult to find it, very difficult to have AI review. And I think that that would be a challenge for pretty much all organizations. So another thing that companies need to think about too is where is your workforce either aligned or where are they in the AI process? There is most likely people in your organization who are using AI. To what degree? Obviously, you may need to find out because that is an opportunity to turn those peoples into advocates, and then maybe rising tide lifts all boats helps other employees use AI in a manner that can help, right? And then from there, you can decrease kind of any type of employee resistance or a threat to their jobs. Yes, there may be some costs for you to upskill, but it's really important that instead of pockets of people using AI and maybe you don't know, it's another thing where you can the entire organization could benefit from training or education, um, and then even if you do not start any AI project, these employees can then level up their job, level up the work that they do as well. So that's a couple. I think those are a couple challenges that you can take a look at. Another big challenge is data and privacy, right? What is trained on? What is, what are these large language training on versus what should I put up? And I think that's a a question that you one thing that I'd always recommend is there's the Reddit rule, right? Are you comfortable putting whatever you've uploaded into your large language model, especially if it's not like an enclosed environment? Are you comfortable that information, are you comfortable with it on the first page of a Reddit or subreddit? That's usually the Reddit rule. And that's something that I think if you could pass on to your employees, that will make any kind of it'll make it more clear on what should or should not be in terms of what what data you should be uploading.
Well, I think with that though too, there's also ways around that. I mean, we know the data privacy and cybersecurity and everything is a big concern, but there are ways around that. So I mean, I think that shouldn't be something to totally deter people. Again, I think if you take the right approach and like you say, create the guidelines, it's not a reason to not use AI. It's really about using it properly and thinking about it. And this really goes back to the fact that, energy companies need to look at AI as an investment, like any investment, and they should get a return on that investment. Our goal is to work with organizations to show them where those returns on investment is. This isn't just an expense, an added expense. You make the investment, you should get a good return on it. I think the other thing too is it also that this isn't something just to turn over to your IT department and have them look into, because they'll look at it from a very technical implementation standpoint, and they won't look at it from a necessarily an investment return on investment standpoint. And I think that's why executives in energy companies need to be the ones that are up to speed on what AI technology is, what it's capable of, and how it can be incorporated into their businesses, because that's where you're going to get that return. So really, it's a top-down approach.
I think too, when we talk about process and to go through a little bit of our process and it, again, in your business, whether you work with companies like us or you do this on your own, something to think about too is, you know, when you're thinking about implementing AI, it doesn't have to be grand and big and require a lot of investment, require a lot of training. It could be something like we talked about, something as simple as, hey, look at 3 to 5 things that your company is always doing that is repetitive, is included data, has prediction involved, and isolate those tasks and maybe figure out, hey, let's run a small little pilot. Can you improve it, increase your efficiency, increase productivity by 10 to 40%? Just by that alone. You know, let's say you save 3 to 5 hours a month on doing some sort of small little automation for your reporting. Something as simple uploading your Excel file and having AI analyze it and giving you some insights that you can include in your report. If that can save you 3 to 5 hours a month, maybe something as simple as, hey, a digital assistant for your HR team for onboarding. So instead of having employees requiring them to read a handbook, or reference the handbook or connect with people because they don't know, then you have a digital assistant that can do that for them. And then, as you go on, you could have potentially voice, so you don't even have to type, you just have to have a conversation with it. So imagine stacking these very simple tasks, 3 to 5 of them in a month. So it goes from 3 to 5 hours to 15 hours to 30 hours to 100 hours. Think of how much time savings you would have had and what that time could be done for your business, especially ones with, very, very small margins or margins that, hey, if an extra 100 hours, what could you do to help with the business?
Well, and I think with that too, Carl, I think the big thing too is that message is, like we say, start small, get into it. Avoid having your IT team necessarily or another part of your organization come in and say, we're committing to this new solution from XYZ tech company, and it's going to be an investment of $500,000. What ends up happening, and we've seen quite often, is organizations make these commitments and then realize that it's not meeting their needs, and these things get archived and nobody uses it, and they're kind of unmet promises. That is what we want to avoid, and yet we are seeing it with clients on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think that the key thing here is because of how fast AI is moving, start small, things that, if it works, hey, then you can have an opportunity to scale it to more teams, maybe to an entire department, and then eventually to the entire business. And remember that AI is changing so fast that the last thing I want to leave you with is don't necessarily buy the latest and greatest tool. Test it out a couple months. And then if you're ready and if it really works, that's an opportunity for you to perhaps purchase it longer. But we know AI changes so fast that in 3 months, a new tool could overtake it. And that goes exactly for Microsoft Copilot, Google Workspace, or even any of the tools that the major AI labs provides. Learn more about implementing AI in your industry by watching these videos here. Enjoy today's show and want to learn how AI can impact your business? Then please subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch your next episode.